afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on our Best Practice Spotlight Organization Request for Proposal for the Mental Health and Substance Use Specialty Program. My name is Sabrina. I am a registered nurse and the Program Manager for the Mental Health and Substance Use Program here at RNAO. And I'm happy for all of you to see familiar names here today. So before we start, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. If you can do a couple slides, Amber, thank you. We recognize that our work and the work of our members takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across Ontario. We wish to acknowledge that the office of the RNAO is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We also recognize that the participants of this webinar are located in other traditional lands across Ontario. Today, this land is still home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this territory. By personally making a land acknowledgement, you are taking part in an act of reconciliation, honoring the land and Indigenous heritage, which dates back to over 10,000 years. We encourage you to learn about the land that you reside on and the treaties that are attached to it. Land acknowledgements are an act of reconciliation, and we must all do our part. Please let me allow you to introduce our esteemed panel for today's discussions. You'll be hearing from all of us throughout the webinar. While I am speaking, please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat if you have not done so already. What is your name? Where are you located? And what organization do you represent today? So here are our objectives for today. Today, we hope to provide you an overview of the RNAO, BPSO, and Mental Health and Substance Use Specialty Program. Provide an opportunity to do an overview of eligibility requirements and application process and associated timelines. We have an opportunity to hear from 3 wonderful leaders in BPSO from across the mental health and substance use sector. We'll identify RNAO supports provided for interested organizations that wish to learn more about the BPSO and apply. And we'll have a nice time for a Q&A discussion as well. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Michelle Ray, Director of the International Affairs and Best Practice Guidelines Program, to take us through the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with all of you today. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about RNAO for those of you that don't know, but I'm pretty sure many of you do. So the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario is a professional association of registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and nursing students in Ontario, Canada. And it is led by Dr. Doris Grinspan, a very credible voice leading the nursing profession to influence and promote healthy public policy and clinical excellence. She is also the founder of the Best Practice Guideline and Best Practice Spotlight Organization Knowledge Movement and their signature programs of RNAO. Next slide, please. So a little bit about, thank you, Amber. So a little bit about RNAO's BPG and BPSO programs. So they're a social movement of science where we undertake nursing-led development of guidelines, support their implementation across many different organizations, and then monitor and evaluate what the impact has been for patients, for the organizations, and the health system overall. All of this work has been published in our neat and handy textbook, which many of you may be familiar with, Transforming Nursing Through Knowledge. So this was published in 2018, but really as this program has undergone a social movement since 1999, we really have been transforming care through nursing knowledge. There has been a large interprofessional team that engaged in the BPSO movement, a social movement of science and implementation of best practices. Next slide, please, Amber. So to date, we have 52 best practice guidelines, and this is over a number of different areas in clinical and healthy work environment, system BPGs, and health equity as well. We're currently working on a guideline regarding addressing anti-Black racism in nursing, and we have a guideline for Indigenous-led smoking cessation. So many different guidelines across many different topics, and of course, mental health areas, which you'll hear a little bit more about from Sabrina shortly. We also have a number of different implementation toolkits, the Social Movement Action Framework and the Knowledge to Action Framework. These are two evidence-based frameworks that are utilized by BPSOs all over the world to be able to implement best practices, all with support available from RNAO. Next slide. So the BPSOs, what does BPSO mean? It's a best practice spotlight organization, and its principal goal is really to influence the uptake and sustainability of best practice guidelines that have been developed by RNAO in partnership with many of you and experts across the world. So across these different healthcare settings and academic organizations, we've been able to advance practice excellence and optimize those outcomes for all of the people that are involved, including the organizations and the health system overall. Next slide. And to date, we have over 1,500 BPSOs in healthcare and academic sites worldwide, pretty much on every continent, and of course, many of them right here within the province of Ontario. And we're so excited to be able to continue the spread of implementing best practices in the province through a new program dedicated to mental health, which Sabrina will share with you momentarily. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Sabrina.
Thanks, Michelle. So as Michelle said, when we did our needs assessment of the webinar, one of the major things that had come out was what is new and exciting at RNAO. And so it's our pleasure to launch our newest specialty BPSO program in mental health and substance use. In this program, you will implement two foundational guidelines, which is consistent against other BPSOs in the program as well. And that is transitions in care and services, and as well as people-centered care, which will be released later this month at our Global Summit. This third guideline will be a mental health or substance use guideline of your choice, or the Youth Wellness Champion Program, which I'll get to in momentarily. To support the learning, networking, and integration of these guidelines across the organization, RNAO has multiple supports to support your organizations with, including knowledge exchange meetings that will be specific to this sector, opportunities for collective work and advocacy, opportunities for capacity building, education for your organization and your staff, community collaboration, and opportunities to network at the local, national, and international level, and mentorship opportunities, whether you're the mentor or the mentee as well. Next slide, please. New and exciting to the BPSO program is for the first time, BPSOs can choose to implement an evidence-based program. In this case, the Youth Wellness Champions Program. The Youth Wellness Champions Program is an innovative, peer-based program based on youth engagement principles designed to help youth develop the knowledge, the skills that they need to cope with mental health and substance use issues. Promoting and implementing this program requirements include joining the YWC Advisory Committee as part of knowledge exchange and networking, implementing the YWC toolkit across your schools, school boards, and/or community, recruitment and training of adult leads, as well as youth champions to implement the program, and the trainings are available on the toolkit online, which is now in the chat. Implementation of a youth-led health promotion activities across your sites, submission of evaluation data related to the Youth Wellness Champions indicators, and participation in public visibility initiatives. Next slide, please. For mental health and substance use BPSOs, similar to Cohort 9 BPSOs, organizations will engage in a 3-year partnership with RNAO and contribute the necessary financial resources to support guideline implementation, evaluation, and sustainability during the pre-designate phase for the first 3 years. Next slide. So the pre-designate period is a 3-year process that's been established by RNAO to help organizations become BPSO designates. There are 5 pillars that are foundational to attain BPSO designation. And these 5 pillars really support integration of evidence, implementation, and evaluation sustainability. Overall, the first one is infrastructure, and at a glance, this is looking at developing, having BPSO leads and or co-leads to lead the program, but also having a BPSO team that's integrated within the organization to oversee the work. Capacity development of champions that actually are leaders that can support implementation, evaluation, and sustainability of your change. Systematic guideline implementation, which you spoke at the last slide about. Dissemination, so sharing your work both locally, nationally, and internationally, whether it's through conferences, newsletters, or manuscripts, as well as collaborative reporting and evaluation to determine the impact and show the impact of the amazing work you'll be doing. The agreement deliverables are aligned with and with supports from RNAO, and I'll get to that in the next slide, and they provide the structure to advance your collective work. Deliverables are designed to support lasting and successful change. So the program supports on the next slide that are available through RNAO is you will have a dedicated BPSO coach, and this is a master's prepared nurse that will help you and guide you through the process of implementation. You will also have a mentor organization, potentially maybe one of the 3 organizations that are here today, or another organization that may align much more better with some of the work that you wish to do. There is an orientation session, and that will occur in early spring. There are multiple capacity development opportunities, whether it's our champion workshop, our knowledge exchange meetings, and or our clinical BPG Institute. There are supports in monitoring and evaluation. There are also research opportunities through our Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship program as well. And all of these are free of charge. So what are the eligibility requirements? The eligibility requirements can be found in the RFP on the next slide, Amber, thank you. And the 2 major requirements are a commitment to evidence-based practice with a mental health focus for the subspecialty, as well as the organization supports staff to participate in opportunities to develop capacity in evidence-based practice. The eligibility requirements are further elaborated in the RFP. If you have any questions about that, our team here is more than happy to address them. And the link now has been placed in the chat. So next slide. So the RFP for cohort 9 is exclusive to Ontario-based organizations, and successful applicants will enter into a formal agreement with RNAO for the period of 2026 to 2029 in the pre-designate phase. But how do you go about to apply? There are multiple steps in the application process to become a BPSO. And step 1 is the first step, which is submission of a letter of intent. This is an online submission that is due on October 6th. And we'll go, the next slide will show you what that looks like. Once that is received on October 7th, RNAO will release the full application online to your organization. That full application is due November 24th. And then what happens is we will look at the application internally at home office, and I'll go through the review process momentarily between December and January. And the notification of the results will happen in February with a launch in the spring. There are multiple of RNAO supports available to you through this process. You are not alone in this process. To support the application process, we are happy to come and meet with you via Teams, via phone, or even in person if requested. I have dedicated some time towards the end of the presentation to talk about what supports do you require to actually help in the application process and how we can work together as a team to be able to help you submit a successful application. So on the next slide, you'll see what the letter of intent looks like. It is an online form, and it asks basically for your contact information, your organizational information, and the type of healthcare organization, and then you submit. This form should take you no more than 5 to 10 minutes to complete. And the completion of the form will then, in the beginning of October, release the actual application to you. What is of really importance and critical importance to understand is that this letter of intent online is non-binding. So if you put an application in and decide, this is something we really want to pursue, we welcome a full application. But if you review the application and think, maybe next year, that's okay too. So what we highly recommend that is if you're thinking about BPSO, if you want to learn more information about BPSO, submit an intent. When you submit an intent, you'll get the application. You then can review it, make a critical decision, and make an informed decision about whether BPSO alignment is right for you at this time. So once the letter of intent is submitted on October 7th, we will release the application electronically as well. And the letter of intent is in the chat right now. So another way of learning about more about BPSO is coming to our global summit. So we have a 3-day action-packed, exciting global summit this September 23rd, 24th, and 25th. And this is our inaugural global summit. And what this is all organizations that are BPSO will come together to have 3 days of inspiring global collaboration and learning. BPSO partners from around the world will share insights, celebrate achievements, and explore the future of evidence-based practice and system transformation. And today we welcome and invite you all to apply to attend either in person or virtually. Just a little caveat that if you are going to join us in person, the application actually for the hotel, because of food, closes tomorrow. Highly encourage if you could please submit that registration. What we also are really excited to announce is for those organizations that intend to submit a letter of intent either today or tomorrow, again, it's a 5 to 10 minute form, we are happy to actually fund a staff member from your organization. There are criteria that I'm happy to discuss later, and we will send that out following today's email. Again, if you don't submit that letter of intent and you still want to come, please do click the register button to come in person. If you apply after September 10th, so after tomorrow, virtual attendance will be the only option, but we do welcome that as well. So the application has certain criteria that you'll be assessed upon. So the specifics of each of these criteria are available in the RFP, and I welcome you to look at that RFP, and if you have questions, please do let us know. However, each application will be scored on A, the scope of work, including guidelines selected, B, organizational support, C, previous experience with RNAO and non-RNAO guideline implementation, monitoring and evaluation, BPSO knowledge, skill, and experience, capacity to deliver on BPSO requirements and sustain outcomes, and financial contribution. As you can see, organizational support is the most heavily weighted. One of the biggest tips that we can give you today is that the evaluators really look heavily at these letters of support. BPSO cannot be a one-person project, and one big piece that we look at is the letter of intent. Are there a wide variety of individuals and groups that support BPSO in the organization? Because we know the more support you have for the BPSO program, the more successful you will be. The application itself, I'll tell you, is not difficult, but what is most time consuming in my experience and in all of our experiences is actually the letter of support. That's why it's heavily weighted. We encourage you now, if you're interested in applying for BPSO, to start those letters of support. Ask individuals, ask organizations, ask groups to collectively come together and start those letters for you. The rest of the application is fairly simple to fill out. Next slide. So the review process. So once we get your application, we start the review process. And what this involves is 4 to 5 independent reviewers using a pre-established scoring matrix. Each evaluation is scored and then reviewed as a group as well too. And successful applications will be based on the scores of the reviewers. Note that once we have reviewed the application, if there are areas that need clarification or enhancement, we will reach out to you to help you with that. The RNAO will inform successful applicants of the status in writing in the early new year. And so in terms of dates, What is important to remember on the next slide is a letter of intent is due October 6th. The online application opens on October 7th, and so that will be sent out on October 7th. The full proposal deadline is November 24th, and the results notification will be in February. So at this time, the much more fun part starts where we get to hear from our colleagues across the province. And it's my pleasure to welcome our BPSO panelists. I'd like to introduce now Sarah Anderson, if you can just wave. Sarah Anderson is the Director of Care at Long-Term Care at the Royal Ottawa Mental Health. Saharesh Chandani is the Advanced Practice Clinical Lead at the Center for Addictions and Mental Health. And finally, May Tao, who is a Health Promotion Specialist, BPSO Coordinator at Toronto Public Health. So thank you all for joining us today. So our first question for our esteemed panelists is, can you introduce yourself? How long have you been at your organization? Who are you? And tell us a little bit about yourself. Who'd like to go first? Maybe I'll start with May.
Sure, I can go first. My name is May Tao, and I am the BPSO lead from Toronto Public Health, coordinating the BPSO actually at Toronto Public Health. TPH has been a BPSO since 2009. So 2009 to 2012, we pre-designate, and then we officially designated as a BPSO since 2012. It's like it's probably 13 years now. Yeah, 13 years work. Yeah,
that's amazing, May. Thank you. Saharesh.
Hi, everyone. I'm Saharesh. I'm a nurse, advanced practice clinical lead at CAMH, and I'm a BPSO implementation lead as well. So we started our journey with RNAO back in 2022, and because of accreditation, things had to kind of be paused, and we had to take a bit of a break before we started. So we officially launched in November 2023. And we're currently in the pre-designate phase as well for now. And then we're hoping to graduate next March in 2026.
Fantastic. Thanks, Saharesh. And Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Anderson. I'm the Director of Care of the Long-Term Care Unit at the Royal. And it's only our unit that is a pre-designate right now to be a BPSO. We're the same as Saharesh. We'll be graduating next spring and entering our designate BPSO designate period. And I am also the liaison for the program.
Fantastic. Thank you. And so our second question is, and I'll go to May first, why did your organization decided to join BPSO?
Well, TPH wanted to become a BPSO for a long time, even before 2009, but then had competing priority every year. And we thought that 2009 was a perfect, just note that, years to apply, because there were not many priority in that year. So, and then we know that we have a solid infrastructure, such as we have a policy and planning directorates and a QA program. So it fit very well to our goal of the strategic directions as a team, as a learning organization. So we thought, yeah, we are situated perfectly to become a BPSO. And also at that time, the Ontario Public Health Standard, one of the requirement is effective evidence-based public health practice. So BPSO is just perfect for our organization to implement.
Fantastic, because it really fits the goals of the Ontario Public Health Standards as well.
Yes, yes.
That's phenomenal. Thank you. Saharesh, same question. Why did CAMH decide to join BPSO?
Yeah. So when I started in this role, I was told that we were actually a BPSO about 10 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago. So we've kind of seen the impact and the value of being a BPSO and kind of implementing the guidelines, a lot of our policies and processes actually were done through the work of BPG implementation and also supporting the BPGs themselves. So that was a while ago, and then I guess things fell through. And then when Dion, our CNE, kind of started in this organization, it was something that she felt would be really great for CAMH as being one of the mental health organization. It kind of puts the organization on the radar. It makes us one of the first mental health institutions to really support the BPG work and kind of lead evidence-based practice. And we wanted to raise awareness. I think there's a lot of great work that is already happening at the organization, but just to kind of bring in the platform of evidence-based practices involving frontline staff, involving champions, and really putting ourselves out there to kind of showcase the work that we do is something that kind of led us to join or rejoin the BPSO initiative.
Perfect. Thanks, Saharish. Sarah.
Yeah. So I joined the Royal in 2019, and I was the director of care. Came into the organization as the director of care for the 64-bed unit that we have here, and I've worked in standard, typical long-term care homes since 2009. But there was a big change coming to the Royal. It was a younger clientele. It was psychiatric illness. Very different from the other long-term care homes that I've worked in. And I noted that there was knowledge gaps around palliation and the skin and wound program, because so many of our residents were very young when they moved in. They'd lived with us for 15 years at that point, but they were aging in place. So my team was not, my psychiatric nurses were not used to palliative cases, and we're not used to taking care of people with skin breakdown. So I knew we were going to put the work in anyway to follow the BPGs. And with the support that the RNAO offers through the coaches, through the different conferences that you get to be a part of, I knew that I was really going to need some help, because I had walked into a home that had quite a toxic culture on the unit. The staff were kind of digging their heels in to make any changes. So it was kind of help me help you. I was going to, make sure to be part of the BPSO program to help change the morale. And it was right around, maybe a few months after the pandemic, same as Saharish, that we decided to put this in, great timing. But we knew it was urgently needed, and we'll talk more about how fantastic it's been to change the home around. But those were the guiding reasons why we joined.
Thank you. It's interesting to hear that the reasons for joining are kind of really standard, right? In terms of there's similarities between them, whether it's, enhancing evidence-based practice or addressing gaps in knowledge or supporting staff in the development of that knowledge. And or, Saharish, what I really liked what you said was showcasing the staff and the work that they're doing and being able to put that right at the forefront in terms of this environment that we find ourselves in with, low morale, burnout, post-COVID pandemic kind of organizations. And what's really interesting is that for the mental health sector, you guys come from very different, public health versus a clinical hospital versus a long-term care facility. So even across the sector, it's really interesting to see the focus that you guys have as well in addressing BPSO and the rationale for why joining BPSO. So thank you for sharing that. The second question we had, and this actually comes from our needs assessment, is one thing we asked her: what were challenges that might some of you be facing right now in thinking about applying for BPSO? And so we actually wanted to ask this to our panelists to see the lived experience. So what were some of the challenges you faced, either before applying for BPSO or currently face, and how do you actually overcome those challenges through BPSO?
I can
I'll start
go
with you
first.
again.
I'll go first. Yeah. So remember, I told you that before that we thought the year of 2009 was a perfect time. No, not much competing priority for Toronto Public Health to become a BPSO. Well, I lie. It was the worst year. It was absolutely the worst year. So shortly after we got accepted as a BPSO, we were so happy, predestinated by the RNAO. Well, we sent 7 people to the clinical institutes. and we all pumped up to come back and to implement the guideline. That was Sunday, in June. I remember that vividly. The next day, Monday, well, the day after, we started a labor disruptions that lasted until the end of August. Then H1N1 came in October, and then lasted until January 2010. Well, that means that we didn't start to implement the about 5 BPG at that time until 2010. And we shortened the period from 3 years to 2 years. So now 2 years that we have to implement 5 BPG. And that was at that time 5 BPG. So how did we overcome these challenges? Is that we have monthly meetings, in fact, sometimes weekly. We started to promote the BPSO everywhere, every time that we have a chance, like a town hall meeting or nursing celebration. And then at that time, at 2009, we actually have to implement 2 BPG in research. Like we have to do research in that, so that the 2 BPG that we implemented in enhancing healthy adolescent development BPG, and then the interventions to postpartum depression BPG, and now called the assessment and intervention perinatal depression BPG. And so they have to integrate research into the implementation. And so for public health, for people that are in public health know that collaboration is like the DNA of public health. So what we did is we collaborate with Cindy Lee Dennis from U of T to assist us to evaluate the postpartum adjustment support group in East Shore area of Toronto. And thank goodness for her. And for the enhancing healthy adolescent development BPG, we actually have a staff to apply for the advanced clinical practice fellowship and got accepted. And so we have secure time, like she has secure time to do some research on different framework to engage youth. And so it was a great help for this BPG.
Thanks, May.
Yeah.
Sarah, if you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So as mentioned, when we first signed the contract in 2022, it was accreditation. So that obviously took priority, and we had to wait to start the implementation of the BPG. So one of the things was, again, I think very similar to May, is that our time got a little bit shortened because we couldn't head started when we wanted to. However, I just wanted to mention that, when we did bring it up to RNAO towards the end of that time, that there is an opportunity to extend if needed, based on what the circumstances are, based on what the situation is. So there's always that opportunity to kind of take a little bit longer if you feel like you're not there yet, which was really helpful that we didn't have to kind of rush through things, because we also had 5 BPGs that we had wanted to implement. And, when I first started, it's like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. 5, we can do like 1 every quarter or 1 like every 6 months. But these are like, they end up being really big BPGs, and you kind of realize that, okay, you have to take things a little bit slowly. So that extension was really helpful for us as well. Because we started right after accreditation, there was a lot of burnout. So we kind of went from the pandemic, where we also moved buildings that kind of moved from one place to another, then went to accreditation, which also required a lot of champion and frontline engagement, to now implementing best practice guidelines. So, as much as understanding the relevance and the value of why we wanted to be a BPSO and the importance of implementing BPGs, it was a little bit difficult to engage staff all over again. To kind of, get them to feel excited, to get them to feel motivated, to get them to feel engaged to being champions, and to really understand what value they bring in, and kind of adding to their workload, because it ends up being an addition. It doesn't kind of take away from what they're doing, it ends up being on top. So they obviously have to have that motivation and that capacity. So we kind of tried in different ways to engage staff, be it going to, their units, talking to them during the team reviews, emails, through different advisory committees where we engaged champions, engaging. And one of the things we tried to overcome is by engaging interprofessional team members. So really highlighting that, even though RNAO is a nursing association, a lot of the guidelines were written in the perspective of for nurses, that this is something that impacts every single person that deals and supports patients. So really highlighting that piece that, social workers, OTs, BTs are all just as involved and can be frontline champions, which again was great because that allowed us to get a larger number, but also took some little time because they're like, well, it's all nursing related. Why am I doing this? So having an understanding of how these BPGs impact interprofessional collaboration and frontline staff was also very important. Also balancing different initiatives across the organization. So, right now there must be a lot of different things happening everywhere, especially now that everyone's back from the summer, or there's different times in the organization that kind of gets a little bit busy and hectic. So really prioritizing and understanding, okay, how does the work that we want to do fit in with something that is already being done? Because in a really big organization like ours, kind of we work in a bit of a silo where different departments are doing their own different initiatives, quality improvement projects. So it's hard to know what everyone else is doing, but kind of understanding that, okay, if we want to implement our first guideline, which was on promoting safety or minimizing restraints, there's a lot of great work that already CAMH does. But how can we kind of tie in the work that we're doing already as an organization, and how can we use the stage of BPG to kind of elevate that or to kind of add to it? So instead of kind of looking at like, oh, how do we create something brand new or a brand new initiative, a brand new project, let's kind of see what's already being done and attach ourselves to it or attach the work to it so that we get, we kind of get through implementing recommendations, but also the organization in a way looks good, but also kind of has evidence informed practices and initiatives that are being currently implemented. So we try to kind of find those relevances when we're implementing any of the new guidelines, and also stakeholder collaboration. So I had to learn that, implementing guidelines in an organization as big as ours is not just talking to one department or one set of groups. There's a lot of people involved. And if you don't talk to all the right people, sometimes there's gaps, or there's people that are like, oh, well, I didn't know about it. Or, why are you doing this? The work is already being done. So as frustrating sometimes it can get, I think being patient and kind of understanding who you need to involve from the beginning instead of rushing through the implementation. I think it's better just to kind of like slow down, understand different stakeholders that you need to involve. We created an advisory committee and a steering committee. So advisory committee kind of included a lot of different clinical directors. So when I brought up an idea that, oh, we want to do this, someone was able to say, hey, yeah, I have a connection for this. Or, hey, this work is already happening in this department. Why don't you connect with them and see if, you can somehow work together? So, it took a little bit of time to kind of form that collaboration, and also, someone who is coming from frontline or someone who's coming from like the middle management to then talk to directors and talk to like different executive members. It's also very stressful, but that allows us to kind of build those relationships and collaboration, and for the organization to hear about it. Because I think the other challenge sometimes happens is that we're kind of talking to the middle management team, who unfortunately, as much as grassroots that we want to have, they don't have a lot of impact. So you kind of have to do like a collaborative approach where you talk to the top people, let them know what you're doing, because initially, if they don't know what you're doing, then they're not going to give their staff time to actually make this an important value as well. So it's kind of like understanding your organization and kind of understanding who you need to talk to, who you need to involve, and communicating as much as possible, because like people still sometimes say that, hey, I have no idea what BPSO is, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do, or what is my role as a champion. So sometimes they're just communicating as much as possible, and not obviously like, putting yourself down and people don't know what you're doing or what they're supposed to do, because there's so many people. We can try kind of as much as we possibly can. And then having different champion engagement strategies. So I think one of the things that I did initially is kind of just like, I dived right into it in terms of engaging champions, which is great. I think it's important, but also kind of going back a little bit backwards and understanding what kind of strategy do you want to have? How do you want to engage your champions? Do you want to have it for each of your guidelines? Or do you want to have a champion network, a whole pool of champions, and kind of like them deciding which champion kind of does what? So I think just taking a little bit of time, formulating an idea, formulating a plan, and then implementing it. And then, it doesn't always work in a straight linear way. You have to come back to your roots. You have to come back to the drawing board. It's a bit of a back and forth process. That doesn't mean that you're failing. It just means that you're kind of doing a project, right? Like in a project, you start somewhere, you come back, you evaluate it, and it kind of makes it easier for future guidelines that you're implementing. Because as we started other guidelines, it became a lot easier, and we knew exactly which direction we needed to go to. And by then, a lot of people actually knew about it. So it might start a little bit more slowly, but it kind of like the more you prepare and the more you build your foundation, the easier it is as you go up. Sorry, I took a lot of time.
No, that's okay. It was fabulous. It's interesting to hear you talk about, building momentum, but understanding local context, and that, the first time it might take a little slower to be able to say, like, this is the evidence, but this is my context and how do they marry? But, as time goes on, that wave, that movement of change just happens so rapid. It happens much more rapidly. And between May and Saharish talking about the external factors that sometimes you can't control, that they come out with, like a pandemic, you cannot control, accreditation. I mean, you have a little control of it, but it still is a huge shift in the organization. But even then, persevering to engage your leaders at the right time in the right place, understanding staff collaboration at the right time at the right place, and then enhancing staff collaboration and leadership opportunities to take this work on really builds that momentum. And I know, Sarah, I'll let you answer next, because I know that's going to go right into what I was just talking about too.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that my colleagues have said here that we haven't felt. Any change is challenging, can be really challenging, right? And there's always something, whether it's H1, N1, or accreditation, or you get a change in senior leadership where you work, or you get a different director. There's always changes that happen. But I think in healthcare, we're pretty good at rolling with the punches at this point. But I had very similar challenges. I mean, the biggest piece, honestly, the biggest challenge was spelling out RNAO, BPSO in almost every meeting, because it was like, okay, just get used to having to say Registered Nurses Association of Ontario Best Practice, because they're like, what is that acronym again? And, having, especially from that multidisciplinary standpoint, many RNs and RPNs will know who the RNAO is, but sometimes our allied colleagues do not. So it's selling that, it's selling the program, really, especially as the liaison or a co-liaison of the program. You're really, oftentimes you're the one that's kind of bringing your unit or perhaps your department or your organization along. So it's getting that buy-in, and sometimes you will experience pushback from staff. I mean, for us, it was challenging for my unit because we're the only unit in our entire organization that is on this journey. I'm trying to talk some of my other units into joining the BPSO program, because they are seeing all of the successes that we've had and all the positives that come with the program. So it's not a difficult sell, but I think for yourselves, it's having that patience, one thing at a time, your letter of intent, then your application, and then when you're accepted in, you get a lot of information, and it can be overwhelming, but it's just slowing it down, doing one thing at a time. When you implement that first BPG, yeah, it's a little bit rocky. You're trying to figure out what it is you're supposed to do. How do you turn those recommendations, that theory, into actual practice? And sometimes we have to be a little bit, I'm long-term care, and a lot of the BPGs that we picked are assimilated very nicely into long-term care, but we had to be very creative with how we added into our unit, because our home is so different from other long-term care homes. We have float teams from a mental health facility come over and help, so we had to make sure that we were including them in a lot of our education. So I'm going to say they're challenges, but they're, I think these are challenges that come with anything that you're trying to implement. As soon as you get a top-down policy that you have to implement, or whatever from the CEO that you need to put into place, or whoever it is. It always comes with challenges, dissemination of information and making sure everybody's on the same page and having those touch points. But the collaboration piece is incredibly necessary, and it's incredible how it ends up building your team. So if you're wondering, like, how am I going to get some of my coworkers on board with this? Like, we all know, I think everybody can think of those coworkers that they know they're not going to want to join. They might be difficult. They might be hard to talk into it. They're not going to adopt it, whatever it might be. But it's incredible what this program can do to get a lot of people that you are very surprised at, get them really engaged and get them adopting some of these practices. So so the challenge, like, honestly, the biggest thing is just getting the information out there, making sure everyone knows what it is we're doing now. That's probably the biggest piece for us.
I think one thing that I learned from here is that, challenges can come from external or internal factors, and they're always going to be there. But the reality is how do we as a cohort, how do we as a network support each other, learn from each other to enhance the work that needs to be done while celebrating staff to enhance patient care? And that's what I'm hearing from all of you. So thank you for sharing that. That's been really, really wonderful. And so sometimes we have to come together to learn about our challenges and kind of, boost each other up and scale each other up and share strategies. But sometimes we need to stop and celebrate our successes as well, too. And so what are your results? What are your results of successes that you see because of BPSO in the organization? So maybe I'll start with you.
Okay. I was just hearing about Sarah saying about, getting the staff to remember all these lingos. So I guess one of the success is that at the beginning, I look at the staff, the same things. They can't remember. So I actually developed a BPSO chair. And for those of you, if you come to the Global Summit, you will hear about the chairs. And so I'm going to keep it as a secret at this point, but BPSO chair is what I actually developed at that time. But because of BPSO, it increases my organization's profile in conferences and public relations as a BPSO. And you know that, RNAO BPSO is well known around the world. And so we're so proud to be one of over 1,600 now healthcare and academic organization to implement the BPSO. And then we actually also systematically implement evidence into our practice. So that's because of BPSO. And because of BPSO, we broke the silos. So before, you might say directorate program, they do their own thing, and because of BPSO, they actually collaborate together to implement the BPG. So one of the recent example is that the VDP program and also the reproductive infant health program collaborate together to implement the person and family centered care, which will be known as people centered care, BPG soon. And then, we also get to know to other health unit and then collaborate with them together. And one of them is the Great Bruce Public Health Unit that we collaborate with them to write a manuscript. And then opportunity that we have because of BPSO that we can't imagine. And one of them is, you might say not we, is I can't imagine. I got to actually mentor China and get to go with Doris Grinspan, Dr. Doris Grinspan to China and actually learn from her, which is awesome. It's like a little mini fellowship for me to learn from her. And also we attended the ICN Congress International BPSO sessions. The next two is the most outcome that I saw because of BPSO. The assessment and intervention of perinatal care BPG from 2009 to now, that was a one of the greatest outcome. They were actually one program. There was only one postpartum adjustment program in Toronto in 2009. And because of BPSO, that they actually evaluate the program, And because of evaluating program, they got expanded to other areas of Toronto. And so also because of BPSO, they got to actually go and present with Dr. Cindy Lee Dennis at that time to the ICN in Melbourne at that time. And also because of BPSO, we now actually have a program or a team concentrated or focused on PPD. So it was a great result. And they also presented their result to our Board of Health. And so the enhancing healthy adolescent development BPG, and it's like from it's also was beginning is from each program doing their own strategy to engage youth to now we have an organizational youth engagement policy, and so it's more standardized approach. And we participate in because of that we participate in the RNAO Youth Wellness Champions program with other health units across Ontario. And because we already embedded youth engagement strategies into our school health program, the YWC program is so easy for us to implement. We partnered with our school board, which is like, remember, partnership is our DNA. So yeah, easy for our school with our school board. And as a result, youth were reporting that they gained skills in leadership, collaboration, planning, and communication. And the students also increased understanding of the topic of mental health and also substance use.
Thanks,
That's
May.
it. Yeah.
Thanks, May. It's interesting to, one thing I really like when talking with you about some of the perinatal depression program even too, is, you know, especially in public health, I think when times come and budgets come and it's easy to cut nursing staff, the impact of BPSO has been able to show and demonstrate the impact of nursing in the program and being able to retain and attract more staffing for that as well too through evaluation. And being able to paint that story has just been so beautiful. So thanks for sharing that as well.
Yes, thank you.
Saharish, what are some successes that you've seen as a result of BPSO at CAMH?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's been a lot of interprofessional collaboration. And you can think with some of our guidelines, we've had a lot, like a really great mix of nurses and allied health who have supported the implementation of the guideline. And I think it's great to kind of see the work that the allied health team has done as well, because I think as a nurse, when we kind of look at these guidelines and look at the work that we need to do for patient outcomes, we're in a very specific mindset in what we need to get done. But with allied health and their roles and their different experiences and perspectives, we kind of see a very different implementation strategy. So there's been a lot of different great work that, you know, as nurses, we may not be able to do because that's not our role. That's not part of our roles and responsibilities. So it's been really great interacting with them and learning from them. And very similar to what May was saying, I think it was an opportunity to kind of put CAMH on, as you know, as much as CAMH is already kind of there, it's out there for research. It's out there for, you know, the different work that maybe leaders or executive directors are doing. But now CAMH is out there because of the work that its champions or its frontline staff are doing by either participating in symposiums or in in different conferences. So for the current symposium that we have for RNAO, I actually got the champions to write the abstract and kind of just obviously, you know, because of a lot of work that they have on their plate, is supporting them with their abstract writing, but then also really requesting RNAO if these champions could come for these symposiums so they can do the presentations on their own. Because it's as much as, you know, you become the face of your champions and your frontline staff, sometimes giving them their recognition and kind of bringing them on these different platforms to present their work and to really talk about their work is just means a lot more to them than I think it does for us. And I also, you know, realized that some of these staff who are doing the presentations, if maybe RNAO wasn't well known or if the BPSO program wasn't well known, maybe their managers wouldn't have wanted to take the time out, a full day out of their work and out of their clinical roles to kind of bring them to the symposium. But because they see the work that the champions are doing, they see the impacts of their different projects that they've kind of brought up to the unit, they've really kind of been supporting their engagement and their involvement. We've had, we've kind of made up different opportunities in the organization, either through panel discussions or having Dr. Grisvin's come and visit. So each year we have her come and visit and kind of do a 4-hour session with our champions. But again, a great opportunity for champions to sit, to hear from her, but also for her to hear from the champions, having them present and really kind of getting them involved and getting them engaged to talk about their projects and their work. And also public visibility. I think, we'll hear a lot from Dr. Grisvin and also from RNAO how important it is to kind of be publicly visible. Initially, it didn't obviously make sense to me because I'm like, I'm just trying to do my work. I'm just trying to get this done. But public visibility kind of gets people to talk about, like, what is this? What do you mean by this? Seeing the word BPSO kind of in banners or in posters or in lanyards, it kind of creates a conversation. And that, again, even if, they decide to not be champions, it's one additional person that you kind of talk to and get to tell them that, hey, this is the work that I've done. And I think just kind of having these communication having meetings and kind of hearing different projects that other people are doing that allows, so if I'm doing a project and I talk about it, and someone who kind of is interested gets to hear about it, and then allows for them to engage with these other people and kind of lift this project and kind of implement it across the organization. One other success, which is going to just happen which is, I think, was important to have the leadership involved, is that whenever the delirium guideline that we were going to do in a very different way, kind of got implemented in its own way, because the geriatrics program wanted to create a delirium pathway, and they didn't have a delirium pathway. So then it was important that when our director of nursing kind of sat in these meetings, that she talked about, hey, we actually have a delirium guideline that we want to implement. Why don't you use that to support the work that you have to do? So it just kind of because of these conversations that we've had, because of the synergies that we've tried to build, and because people kind of they know the importance and the value of the evidence that the BPGs bring in, it was a really great collaboration, which allowed for us to implement our guideline, but also for the program to kind of get their pathway on the roll as well.
Thank you. What's really interesting is understanding that the profile, BPSOs help the profile of the organization nationally and internationally, but also that what was really impactful is that the ability for teams, whether interprofessional and or nursing teams, to come together on a shared common purpose to align their work that they're doing. And when you come to KMH, or when you go to Toronto Public Health or the Royal, and you hear the champions talk about the work that's so passionate to them, it transforms the care that's provided to clients. It transforms the care and their impacts that they have in the organization and the system. So it's really, Saharish, I think of the event that you had in the summer, and just hearing some of the champions talk about, the forensics program and the housing supports that forensics provides, and even going to see the houses that clients are going into when they go into community, and that's a champion, right? And that the pride that they carry in the work is really great. So thank you for sharing that. Our final question before we wrap up our session and then open it up for Q&A is, what if you had a magic ball when you were at this juncture that our guests are here today, and there was one thing you wish you knew then that you know now, what would that have been?
I'll answer that. Actually, I had more than one thing. There's still a little bit of time. So at the beginning, I thought that BPSO is it's a 3 years term, and I thought just like taking a degree in university, after you get the designation, which is your degree, I thought that was done. Say done, you got graduate. Well, BPSO actually is an ongoing work. Actually, the 3 years are just the beginning. And so you need to think about resources, financially and human resources, to sustain the BPG after your destinations. And in fact, actually, I actually advocate for this position at that junctions. So hopefully the BPG that you selected, you have already at that time integrated into the practice in your organization, so that it's just like it's a normal practice that it's part of the practice every day, and it's not so much work because it's already embedded. So I also wish that at that time that we had an RNAO coach. So you guys are lucky that you're going to have one. But we had a mentor from another public health unit, but they are actually also going through similar challenge than us at that time. So we didn't communicate until 2010, which is still okay. We got it done. So if the final thing is that I want to say is that if TPH can pull through these redesignated period from 3 years shortened to 2 years without an RNAO coach and implement 5 BPG, not 3, you can do it. So it is the best investment I think that you can ever make. So thank you.
Thanks, May.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so if I knew something back then, I think very similar. I would highlight what May also just mentioned, because even when I talk to the BPG leads right now, they're like, okay, we're graduating in May, so the work that we're doing in terms of different projects, we don't have to continue post March, sorry. And I have to keep reminding them that no, like, even though we graduate and you become a BPSO, the work of the guideline doesn't end. Like, even though you have to implement other guidelines as part of the contract, that our work has to be sustainable. So I think when we start implementing these projects, we kind of think a lot about implementation. We think about who do we want to involve and how do we want to get things done. But the sustainability of all these projects are kind of towards the end of that conversation. And I think we're so, or I was so involved in just getting the work done, then I didn't really think about, okay, how do I want to sustain this when I'm gone, or when we graduate. So I think remembering that sustainability as like the very beginning piece instead of the end piece is very important. The other point was that, again, as I mentioned, that when we first started doing our champion engagement, because when I was brought into this role, we had leads for each of our best practice guidelines. So the way that we kind of enrolled champions was we asked them, hey, which guideline do you want to champion? I kind of feel that if we had done a pool of champions and done projects for each of the guideline as we had implemented the guidelines, that might have been a better approach for us instead of just kind of having a pool for each guideline. I think that disrupted the process a little bit, because even now, our first guideline that we implemented last year, though the work needs to continue, because they were engaged such a long time ago, that they're kind of just like now status quo, or it's become a routine, or they've kind of like stopped doing the work that they need to. So it was, I think it was good in that moment, but I think, again, sustainability, or if you look at the bigger picture, having a bigger pool where everyone's engaged at all times and at different times possibly would have led to a better champion approach as well. One other thing that we tried doing for champion engagement was also, I think this is something that I learned from Humber, was doing engaging staff at orientation. So depending on how your organization works, depending on orientation, how new staff are trained, they're one of like the great opportunities to engage them. But the idea is that we need to first involve the managers. You need to kind of look beyond just the front line, like making sure that your managers and directors are all on board to make sure these new staff take extra time to do the champion training and the champion modules. So just reiterating that instead of kind of just diving right into implementation and kind of getting the work done and doing all the processes, really thinking about how this is going to impact in a year or 2 years. Who am I engaging? At what point am I engaging them? How much more communication do I have to do? And it's being patient, because I think because I might have kind of done things really fast, I had to go back a few steps each and every single time to kind of be like, oh no, like we didn't do this properly because we didn't talk to all the people. We kind of just did it really quickly. So that would be my learning.
Thanks. And that kind of really ties nicely into the agreement, where the first portion that we spoke about in the agreement is that infrastructure and the importance, whether you're a pre-designate, designate, is looking at the infrastructure and embedding BPSO into the fabric of the organization. Where do your BPSO leads sit? Where do your BPG teams sit? Because if it's part and parcel of daily practice in the organization, that is sustainability. And that's really important. I know Sarah had to leave for a class, but I really loved her comments, so I'm going to just read it out. And one thing Sarah said is that understanding the support that you'll receive from other BPSOs, also from RNAO home office, that, the application process may seem daunting, but you're never alone. That the whole program at first might seem overwhelming and impossible, but you're not alone. There are so many people. There are RNAO, there's coaches, there is a variety of different mentor BPSO organizations, both locally, nationally, internationally, that want to see you succeed. And so becoming part of this large international program means that you too get to share each other's challenges, but also celebrate each other's successes as your own. I know I've learned a lot from working both with May, Saharish, and Sarah. However, they're not gone. And we do have time for Q&A momentarily, so they will also to unmute their mics, and hopefully we can engage in a little bit more dialogue in terms of any questions or thoughts that you may have about BPSO and next steps. But before we continue, I just wanted to build on what Sarah was talking about resources and talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available for you during the application period. So we do have the August 19th information session. That was an information session for cohort 9 and M. And that recording is available online. It does go a little bit more specifics in the RFP itself. So we will put that link in the chat for your viewing pleasure. And again, connect with us. Either connect with our panelists, connect with myself. You can connect with Michelle or Sue, who's been working on the chat there, who's also a BPSO coach. If you have any questions, I'm happy to book a Teams meeting. I'm happy to book a call. I'm happy to come out for a visit, to support you in this process as our BPSOs leads that are on the phone here today as well too. We invite you again to the BPSO Global Summit. It's a great way to start networking with other BPSOs, learning from their work both nationally, internationally, and locally as well. There are asynchronous times that we have with our international counterparts, and then time together locally here in Ontario. And so come and learn about BPSO, ask questions, start to network. It's a great way to hear firsthand from BPSOs. And again, the registration for in-person does close tomorrow. If you are interested in submitting a letter of intent, I would highly encourage you to do that. Once you submit it, there are funding opportunities available for those BPSOs that are interested in submitting intents. We also, if you are coming to the BPSO Global Summit, we have opportunity to network together in person. May is going to be there. Saharish is going to be there. Michelle will be there. I'll be there. We're happy to actually sit down and connect and have conversations together as a team with other BPSOs that are interested on the line here as well, and or individually. And then we're also contemplating having RFP drop-in sessions. We're going to open up a Menti momentarily. Amber is going to put a link in the chat because we wanted to start having a little bit more of a dialogue with you in regards to what supports do you think you need in terms of the RFP and the application.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much. My name is Shaylin. I am from the Sioux Lookout First Nation Health Authority, and we are a new pre-designate BPSO. The question I just wanted to ask was in regards to how this new specialty program could maybe work with pre-existing BPSOs, and I'm happy to connect externally if that's easier. But we are interested in implementing some of the substance use best practice guidelines, so I just thought it would be a good opportunity since this is new and exciting.
That's incredibly exciting. Thank you for sharing that, Shaylin. Happy to jump on a call with you and discuss this further to be able to support the amazing work you guys are doing out there. Yeah, Sue, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit about the letters of support. So what we're looking for with the letters of support is the different individuals in your organization kind of agreeing that they understand what BPSO is and that they're willing to support it and get involved. So if you have, for long-term care, it would be like a resident council, family council, your doctors, your physiotherapist, your dietitian. In hospital, it would be your allied health. It could be all the individuals. I often say BPSO is a team event. So often individuals think that it's just nursing targeted, but it really is a team. And so why we really stress the letters of support is we have found those organizations have, as you heard from speakers earlier, who involve everybody, that the success rate is so much better, and just the buy-in and the culture impact. So that's what the letters of support, you can structure them whatever way you want. It's just basically individuals saying we support this initiative and we're aware that the initiative is going to happen.
Thanks, Sue. So I do see some supports in the Menti have popped up. The first one was curious how the MHSU BPSO program can link up with pre-existing BPSOs who want to focus on these guidelines. And that's a really lovely question. The MHSU BPSO being our inaugural cohort, we're looking at wanting to understand, inform, and shape it together. And so existing BPSOs who want to implement guidelines are welcome to connect with us and to with your coach being able to support the implementation of those guidelines itself. The next question is you already do. Thank you. If there's anything more, please do let us know. The link for the letter of intent has been posted in the chat just now. And again, it's just clicking of that link and filling out that document. And then just a matter of timing. The supports information updates on the RFP have been wonderful. You're most welcome. So if there are no more coming in, just wanted to remind you of some contact information. If you are interested in needing to reach out, you can reach out to Amber. Her email is there. It's reach out to me as well. I'll follow up as well with an email with our contact information. Just some important dates. Remember that the letter of intent is due October 6th. That will release the online application on October 7th. If you do submit the letter of intent earlier, we are pleased to be able to support, like today or tomorrow, we are pleased to support your attendance at the Global Summit through some funding opportunities, and I can give you more information offline on that. The full proposal deadline is November 24th, with the results in February and the launch early spring. And so join the movement, become an RNAO member. At RNAO, we advocate for healthy public policy, promote clinical excellence in nursing practice, empower nurses to actively influence and shape the decisions that affect our profession. And right now we have 2 months free. So please do join RNAO and support the work that we all do collectively. And to our attendees, we'd love to hear your thoughts. There is a QR code right at the bottom of that screen over there with an evaluation. If you could just scan the QR code and complete the evaluation, that really helps us understand how we did today and how we can improve. So within the week, you will receive the link to today's presentation, several related resources in our panelists' bios. Please get in touch for more support and more resources, and we hope to speak to you all soon. On behalf of our panel, on behalf of the RNAO staff, we want to thank you for being here with us today, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Have a great day, everyone.